you that, when we go into teaching, that really that should be your goal, is to see kids don't remember what you taught. I've never had anyone come to me and say, geez, Jeff, I really liked that history lesson you gave me. I really liked that. When we did that
Yeah,
Pythagorean theorem thing, I mean, I
yeah,
love
yeah, yeah, yeah.
trees now. They don't tell you, but what they do tell you is how you made them.
No.
And
Yeah.
and even the job you're in, it's how do you make people feel when you're done? When I'm performing in the bars, how do I make those people feel? How do they want you when they walk out of there? Are they going to remember any individual song? Probably not. But how do they feel when they leave?
Hmm.
And it's so important. So that's, to me, is what teaching was all about, was um, making kids feel special and making them feel that you really care about them.
Whatever you
Hey,
did, it worked.
all right, we're in business.
Nice.
You're dealing with a senior here,
No, we
How you
got
doing?
it.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll just start by saying, welcome everyone to a new episode of the Johnny Rogers Show. Today is a especially interesting episode because I ran into, I believe it was grade 7 that you taught me.
Would have been 7 or 8 for sure.
7 or 8, somewhere in there. There was a grade school reunion because the school was closing, and I just thought, it'd be really interesting to have a podcast with somebody who knew me at that age, and to be able to speak to what you've been up to since that time. Because I'm sure that you've done many things. I know that you have a band called Gypsy Moon. We'll get people to go check that out as well. I'll post all the links in the description below. But
Mhm.
please welcome to the podcast, everyone, Jeff McMillan.
Johnny, it's good to see you. It was great to see you down at Commonwealth the other day. It just brings back a lot of memories for sure.
So, what have you been up to since then? What has been your main focus? Have you had more time now, I guess, to focus on music?
Well, I mean, since I've seen you, obviously a lot of things have happened to me since you were in school when I was teaching. So I've been retired for about 15 years, 16 years from teaching, but I didn't retire completely. So
Hmm.
when I retired, I worked for 3 years with the State University of New York in Potsdam, and I worked with student teachers who were teaching up in Canada. During that time period, I wrote 2 books on education. I know. You got me baffled too on that one. And I decided I wanted to try the political route, so I became a trustee for Brockville and Augusta Township, part of the Upper Canada District School Board. Ended up being the vice chair for 3 years and the chairman of the school board for 4. And so I spent a lot of time dealing with the other side of the fence when it comes to education, as opposed to what I knew for 30 years as a teacher.
Yeah.
So that kept me busy, but at the same time, I've been involved in music. I've been playing since I was 12 years old. Yeah, I've been playing in bands since I was 12, but I've been playing in the clubs probably for the last 35 years or so. Ironically, I play with the same bass player that I played with when I was 12 years old.
Oh,
And
wow.
I know. So we've been,
Some
and I'm
chemistry there.
71 now. So you do the math on that one, Johnny.
Yeah, yeah.
We know each other well.
Yeah.
So
What's
Gary,
your favorite type of music to play? Like,
um, I love the blues, and that's what I do. Write and record a lot. So I've got albums out and everything else, but often they're in the blues vein. But you can't necessarily play blues when you're, in town playing out in the public. They want to hear classic rock.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I did the country for a while. I played with a band at Jimmy Wicks and Westburg Union. I loved those 3 years, but I'm not a real country guy, but I
yeah.
love those times. I got a chance to play with Jimmy.
I
So it's
think
classic
country is
rock.
making a resurgence. I think
Huge.
because there's been so much hip hop. Like usually when you look at the trend of a music genre, like rock and roll, let's say rock and roll came in right after, blues and folk, and then
Yeah.
it kind of went into all these different subgenres, and then it didn't become popular anymore. Then you have pop music, and then you had hip hop, which became all these different genres all spread out until now the point where people are like, you've got Post Malone, who was a rapper, now making country songs, Beyonce making country songs. Like when the big artists are turning to a different genre, you know it's something that's
Yeah,
coming up, right?
they found the market that they want to join.
Yeah,
You know, what's
yeah.
interesting is, and I'm sure you remember when I was teaching, I used to run the dances at the school, and I'd be up on the
Yeah.
stage on the music. And I had a lot of pride in myself in terms of keeping up with the music that the kids were into until rap rolled in. And for some reason, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, you're
Now,
like,
when I
this
was
just
teaching, I
doesn't
used to
fit.
love to pretend I was a rapper. You know what I'm saying? I used to
Yeah, yeah.
get the kids rolling on the floor, or I even used to be able to show them how to moonwalk.
Oh,
Not
not
well.
well.
But they liked the fact that the teacher was giving it a shot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like that was very much your teaching style too, which I always appreciated. Like the hands-on learning experience of like just financial literacy. When was the first time that you tried that with a class? And was it something that you had to bring to like the principal first of like, hey, I'm thinking of trying this sort of outside of what the curriculum is, right?
Johnny, I was very fortunate that I had good principals who allowed me the freedom to explore what I wanted to explore. But let me go back a little bit further why I ended up the kind of teacher I did. I struggled as a student in school. It wasn't something that came easy to me because I don't think I was learning in the way they were teaching. Um, and so because of that, becoming a teacher was not my calling. It wasn't what I was going to do with my life. And it wasn't until, there was all these different opportunities. I was a football player. So as a football player, I had the opportunity to go down to St. Mary's University in Halifax because the coach, I met him and he said, come on down here. So it got me into university. And then after 1 year, I thought, no, I want to go back home. So I transferred back to Queens. To make a long story short, my early years as a teacher or as a student were hard. Just to get a mark above out of the 50s was hard for me. So when I finally learned how to learn and became a teacher, I can remember down at Commonwealth, I would have been in my third year of teaching. And on the blackboard, I had a sentence. And you underline the noun with a single line, double line for the verb, round brackets around the adjective, square brackets. And I turned and I looked at the kids. I can remember turning from the board, and I had about 40 kids in my class, and every one of them looked at me like this. And something hit me, Johnny, and I said, I
Yeah.
can't do this. I cannot teach like this. This is
Uh-huh.
how they taught me. I can't do it. So from that moment on, I was always looking for an opportunity to expand the way teaching could work. So I was teaching over at a school at the West End or the East End of Rockville one day, and I made a fast trip to the bank. Now, back in those days, when you went to the bank, now they have queue, like a long queue to get to the teller. Well, in those days, you'd go to a counter, you'd fill out a withdrawal slip, and then you'd pick the teller you wanted to stand behind. I never
Oh.
picked a line that was moving fast, always. And I'm looking at my watch thinking, oh God, I got to get back to school. And in
Yeah.
front of me was a young guy, he must have been 18 or 19. He gets up to the teller. The teller says, where's your withdrawal slip? And I could hear him say, I don't know how to fill one of those out. And of course, I'm standing there looking at my watch, and all of a sudden I thought, of course you don't, because nobody has shown you how to do that. So on my drive back to the school, I thought, how many other things do kids not know how to do that I do every day of my life that I can tie directly to the curriculum, what I have to teach anyways? And if I have to teach it, why use a textbook and answer 15 questions at the end? Why don't I give them an introduction to what it's all about and then apply it to the real world? So that's where it started. And then I got the brainwave that why not have them work for me at McMillan Industries? And you were going there, you were in the
Yeah, yeah,
Tamblin
yeah.
class, you were
You're
working
like,
at
this
Tamblin
is
Industries. And
legal,
it
legal
just
child labor. No.
yeah. Well, the big
Without
thing
the
was,
labor.
if you remember, right from the beginning, we had
Yeah,
you
yeah,
25 years old.
yeah.
Everybody was 25. So that means your schooling was done.
Yeah.
So you had to tell us where you went to school to do whatever it is you wanted to do. So we were getting you into that. You had to go through job applications. You had to write a resume. You had to do the interview. And then, of course, we would pay you, but then you had to go home and talk to your parents about deductions. And you
Yeah,
remember, should I get a dental plan? Do I need an RRSP? And the great thing about this was all the math that we were teaching tied right into it, especially when we get into selling you guys cars,
yeah,
because we had to prove to us, could you afford it in the money that was coming in? Um, you had to have a car eventually because of where McMillan Industry was in Ottawa. We just picked a spot on Mirabel, so
yeah, yeah.
you had to have bus routes to it. And you remember you were sharing apartments, or you could go on your own, design your own apartment.
Yeah, you could pick apartments. I remember all of this because when you think about it, like you said, like it's applying it to real world situations without even needing to leave the classroom, right? Like people,
Yeah,
I think people have two ideas of education that are almost like on the extreme ends. One is the rigid one where it's like you said, uh, read all this information and regurgitate it back to me and
yeah,
then throw it aside and never use it again. And then on the other end, it's like, let's be out in nature and like, count all the butterflies and then times it by the bees and like, okay, that's too far that way. But like
yeah,
what you guys did was like, no, 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 you're actually going to need to know how to fill out a resume. You're actually going to need to know how much you have for an apartment, how close you
yeah.
are to work, how important your education is to how much of the salary you're going to get for that education when you get out of it. Like you guys laid it out perfectly within the classroom.
But Johnny, when I was talking to you at Commonwealth the other day, you told me something, and you told me that Mr. Tamlin gave you a raise. So I phoned him and I said, "All right, Rich, what's this about you giving this kid a raise?
Yeah,
We don't give anybody a raise." So you must have been pretty
yeah.
smooth to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that. But
yeah,
no, it was, and the fun part about it was, especially when I had gone from this one school, because that's where I started over at Tony
yeah.
Ada, but I brought it to Commonwealth and I ran into
Yeah.
Rich. And so Rich and I became a team,
Mm.
and we just loved what we were doing and playing off each other. And the fun we would do those mock interviews. So we used to, they were called three-way interviews, where you had the interviewer, the interviewee, and a student watching and observing and doing the evaluation. So Rich and I would set it up so you could see how it could be. So he would be the interviewer. I'd come in and be late, and I would pick a sandwich up and start eating it, and he would be biting his cheek because he'd be laughing so hard. But you guys loved it because we love to play. And it's funny that the business you're in is so important, because I firmly believe that laughter opens up all of the channels. And as a teacher, you have to have the kids having fun.
Oh
There's
yeah.
no, there's no way that learning should
No.
not be fun. No
But it's
way.
it's the environment, right? Like I think it's like you guys are almost like set up for failure. You're getting kids in super early in the morning, so they're tired. They probably have had like a sugary cereal for breakfast, so their
Yeah,
brain's not functioning well and they're hyper. And then you
yeah,
put them in this room that's like, the panel, like the lights above you, and like it's just,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
a teacher, and then sometimes you have a teacher who just like they don't enjoy what they're teaching, so they're just kind of going through the motions. And it's a
they've
hard gig. Like
kids feed off the energy of a teacher.
yeah, truly,
And
truly.
and,
The ones you
and
remember the most are the ones that were able to feed off
um,
that energy.
Johnny, when I was working over at SUNY Potsdam, I used to make a speech to all of the students that were brand new that year. Sometimes there'd be like 500. And I'd started off by saying, I want you to get into groups, and I want you to talk about the teachers that had an impact and influenced you.
Yeah.
And 20 minutes later, they report, and they were hard pressed to come up with one or two.
Wow.
And I said to them, can you imagine if I asked you to do this and you couldn't reduce it to 10, 15, 20? You couldn't bring it down because they all had an impact on you. Can you imagine? But you're absolutely right about it. I mean, the way I taught, like I said, I was very lucky that I had principals just allowed me to do my thing because the kids were so engaged, loved it. I mean, when we were doing that life skill stuff, you guys wanted to be there. You wanted, and it wasn't like we're going to do it for a half hour and move on. We'd
Mhm.
sometimes spend half a day or the
Yeah,
whole day
yeah.
on it.
And you wanted to like work together with people
Of
on it.
course you did, because
Yeah.
you were engaged, and so yeah. I mean, if you're coming to school and it's running like an assembly line, and the teacher pours the
Yeah.
stuff in by, yeah. I mean, the good students learn that way. They you pour it down their throat, they chew it up, they spit it back out, and off they go. But I couldn't teach that way. I just couldn't, because to me, um, I was a failure because of that approach,
Mm.
and I couldn't do that to other kids. So it was great. I loved every second of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
truly. Did you have like a teacher growing up that like sort of stuck with you, or a professor or somebody in that
You know,
same sort of role?
it's interesting. When I think back about that, um, the answer basically is no. But I did have a high school teacher, and I was in a band. I was playing, I think I was 16, 15, 16. And I was skipping school every morning to get home to get the mail because I owed on a piece of equipment that my parents didn't know I had.
Uh,
And so the teachers were all writing me off, and I was under a lot of stress. And I can remember this one teacher, and his name was Mr. Grant. And to this day, I will add him. I learned so much just from what he did. He stopped me in the hall and he said, "Jeff, can I talk to you? But not about school. I just want to talk to you." And he said, "Something's bothering you." And I told him, it was like the weight of the world came off my shoulders. And that's all I needed, was an adult to care about me more than
yeah.
teaching.
Yeah.
And so that impacted how the kind of teacher I tried to be my whole career. But it
Yeah.
was I loved it. I loved teaching right up to the last bell. But I'm also, Johnny, a believer that I retired at the top of my game, because the stuff we were doing in life skills was only a tip of the
You gotta
iceberg of
go out on top.
what we were doing at the end was just unbelievable, because we were doing reality-based learning curriculum, and it was amazing. And we were getting attention all across the province. We were written up in magazines. It was great. And then Rich left me and went to another school, but I kept doing it. But the
Yeah,
thing is,
yeah.
I'm a firm believer that in any job, you leave when your time is up. Like if the numbers are, us, it was an 85 factor, so age and number of years that you taught. You leave when you love it, because if you stay too long, you don't love it any longer.
Mhm.
And the memory of all the good things are gone. Plus, in teaching and education, it's important, I believe, for us guys to get out of the way and let the new ones come in, because they don't get jobs until we retire.
Yeah,
But
true.
it was a great profession. I loved it. But again, it was not my calling. I came in through the back door, and yeah, it was nobody ever, all my friends just went, well, they laugh even to this day. A, you were a teacher, and B, you were the chair of the school board. Yeah, come on. Get real, Jeff. Yeah, it happened. Believe
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny
But
though, like to think about that sort of growth too, going from like, there's no way I'd ever do this, to like you wrote 2 books, you said, on
yeah, yeah. One's
it?
called
Like,
The 30 Years of Mondays, and the other one is What If Learning in the 21st Century.
yeah. So I like,
Yeah.
why don't you go into those books a little bit? Like the first book, what was it like to write that and conceptualize that? How did that start for you, that you decided I'm
I
gonna write a book? Like,
Johnny, I'm an extremely right brain thinker.
okay.
That's why the music is easy for me to write and record and all that stuff. That's probably why I had challenge in school, because I right brain, I'm out there always, and so for
Hmm.
me to have to sit down and put my thoughts in an organized chapter by chapter, sentence by sentence, it was painful.
Oh
But
yeah.
what I said to myself, you're going to do it, Jeff, and you're going to make it like a job. So I got up every morning, started writing at 7, and I said I will write until 3 o'clock. And then at 3 o'clock, I put it away for the day and next morning. So I made it a job, and one chapter at a time. And so the first one, 30 Years of Mondays, was a fairly easy one to write, because basically what I was doing was writing about what I knew as a teacher. Um, as a beginning teacher, what it was all about, what writing report cards are all about, parent interviews, what they're all about, all of those kind of things, how to set your classroom up, how to deal with behavior. And behavior was, I never had too many behavior problems with kids. I think because I engaged them, I got them involved. And
Hmm.
so the second book was dealing with what Rich and I were getting a lot of attention with, and that was the reality-based learning. And it was incredible. But to write it down and convince teachers that it's the way to go,
That's
you
hard.
have
Yeah,
you have to have a lot of research, and you have to back it up with some real legitimate information. So I had to do a lot of reading to support what we were already doing. And again, don't remember now how long it took to write them, but it was painful. But it was a nice experience because
That's what I hear.
get it out of my head and it's done. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
when I write songs. I mean, I love the writing process. I love to write lyrics because I learned in high school a long time ago, and this is why writing books were a bit of a challenge. I was good at writing poetry. I
Mm.
was not good at writing prose, writing long sentences and paragraphs and so on. So to write poetry um, is like writing song lyrics, and it was so to this day I love it. And then being a keyboard player and a guitar player, I can put it all together, and so it's that whole right side of my brain just never stops.
Yeah, I
And
know.
you
I can
got the
imagine.
benefit of it, or you were tortured by it.
No, I can imagine that yeah, that definitely would have been tough. Like especially two books. That's why I'm like, oh man, I can't even like I've tossed around the idea myself of writing a book, but I couldn't possibly. This
You can if you make it a job.
this album that I like made, this music album was 2 years
Mhm.
it took me to finalize just 10 songs on it. So I was like,
Really? Yeah.
yeah, that was my my pandemic distraction, let's say.
Well, Johnny, for me, the biggest challenge has always been the organization beyond the right side of the brain, because
Hmm.
organization is all left brain activity. Eh? So about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I said to myself, Jeff, you've been writing songs for 10 years, but you've never organized. I put a CD out called Jeff's Got the Blues maybe 10 years ago, and
Okay.
it's on Amazon and all that stuff. But since then, I wrote song after song after song. So I said to myself, and Dina, my partner, said, Jeff, you got to sit down and organize them. So I thought, okay, I'm going to put them into albums. So I ended up, after 14 albums, I'm still finding songs. I go, oh my God, I forgot I wrote that one. So right now, I've got 3 of them on Spotify, and they're all
Oh,
over.
nice.
They're not under Gypsy Moon, they're all under Jeff McMillan.
I'm gonna pull
Uh,
that up.
but, it's kind of fun, and every once in a while I'll get a message or an email from somebody that's playing one of my songs in Britain, or they're playing it. There's a guy that plays it just off the coast of Spain, and you go, "Whoa, pretty cool stuff."
Yeah, I love seeing the even with this podcast, just seeing like the different areas that people are watching it from kind of makes you go, oh, that's cool.
It makes
Like,
you realize how small the world is, when you're connected.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's pretty cool stuff.
and I've heard this before too of some artists even say that like they have to use the internet to make it abroad before their hometown where they're from will even recognize them, because where you're from everyone just looks at you from when they met you or from when they know you from, right? So they
Yeah.
kind of hold that image of you in their head, and they couldn't
Mhm.
imagine you possibly, like, even just you being a teacher, they're like, what, like that's so crazy, I can't imagine you doing that. You're like, well, it happened, like I
Yeah.
did do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I say, I come in through the back door. I I've been one of those guys that have been very lucky when it comes to doors opening up for me, and the opportunities. And when I was younger, I wasn't afraid to put my foot through that door and open up and say, "Hey, what's in here?" I was
Yeah.
also lucky to be a football player. So when you can imagine a young guy that's struggling in school, and he ends up graduating from Queens, and then I got accepted into law school at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. So I was over there going to school, and eventually after I did 1 year, and I said, I can't do anymore. I got to go home. So I taught at a private school it was an international school whose parents were working the North Sea oil rigs, and they were all Americans. And I was
Wow.
teaching fifth grade. And that's where the passion hit me. Because prior to that, I had no interest in teaching. And I went, wow, I kind of like this. So I phoned back to Canada, and the university said, sorry, the applications are all closed. You can't get in. So I thought, okay, so how do I create an opportunity here? So I got a hold of my football coach, and actually he was an assistant coach because the coach had retired. And I said, they won't let me in. He says, give me a week. So a week later, he calls me back and he says, I got you in. I can't get you into the high school panel like you want, but I can get you into the elementary panel. I said, I'll take
Yeah.
it.
Wow.
Johnny, once I got in, the passion was there. I loved it. I loved kids. And I had 30 incredible years just because I loved every minute of it. Just so you see how you can come in the back door on things that you
Yeah,
never.
yeah,
And I can remember you saying that the talent show down at Commonwealth up on stage, who would have ever thought? What were you,
yeah.
grade
Yeah.
four, something like that?
Grade
And how
four.
many times do we have kids where we give them an opportunity and a door opens for them and they go, whoa,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's it. I didn't even do well.
you didn't have to do well. You
I was
just
just
had
on stage. I wish I could remember the teacher assistant. It's killing me. I remember her off to the side, and as I'm bombing with street jokes that I've stolen, like it's not, I didn't write these jokes. They were street jokes that were PG enough that they got approved for this talent show. And just I'm sending them out just one after another, and
yeah.
just to nothing, spatters of laughter. And she just was laughing and clapping, and I could just, even at 10, I was like, oh, that's just someone being like supportive,
But you know what?
But it
It lit a
worked.
spark,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I went home
And
and I started watching comedians. Like I
yeah,
was watching every comedian I could to just learn like how are they making people laugh? What are they saying? What are they doing
yeah.
with their body? And I started studying it like a class, basically.
I think like to me, that is the greatest thing that when you can light a fire in a student, and 9 out of 10 times we don't even know we lit it. But we do it by creating opportunities for kids to explore something that might be their passion. And Johnny, beyond the normal curriculum, you have to be able to open those doors because not everybody is going to be a doctor or a lawyer. They're just not going to be. Or they're not everybody is
Society
universal.
needs lots of things.
Oh my God. So for me to, I think anytime a student writes me and says, oh, Mr. McMillan, you had a great influence in my life. And because of you, I'm doing this, I just go, oh my Lord. You see, when I was at teachers college, um, I had an interview. All of us had interviews before we graduated. And I remember sitting down in this one room and the principals from all these different counties were there. And this one principal sat down with me and he says, okay, Jeff, he says, so you want to be a teacher? And I said, yeah. He says, what's your philosophy of education? And I thought, the hell is a philosophy? What does that mean? I said, well, I hope that after teaching so many years that I can say I had an impact on at least one student. He looked at me, Johnny, says, thank you very much. Next. That was it. I was done with that interview. Think about that. And I
Wow,
went,
yeah, yeah.
what? So obviously my answer wasn't the right one for him,
Oh
but I
wow.
do believe that, when we go into teaching, that really that should be your goal is to see kids don't remember what you taught. I've never had anyone come to me and say, geez, Jeff, I really liked that history lesson you gave. Or, I really liked that. When we
Yeah,
did that
yeah.
Pythagorean theorem thing, I mean, I
Yeah,
love
yeah, yeah, yeah.
these now. They don't tell you, but what they do tell you is how you made them.
No.
And
Yeah.
and even the job you're in, it's how do you make people feel when you're done? When I'm performing in the bars, how do I make those people feel? How do they want you when they walk out of there? Are they going to remember any individual song? Probably not. But how do they feel when they leave?
Hmm.
And it's so important. So that's to me is what teaching was all about was um, making kids feel special and making them feel that you really care about them. And I did. I care about them all.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I also, what I admire about you too is that you have this like outside creative thing that you work on. Do you know? Like, I don't think a lot of people, I think a lot of people will, if they're lucky, they work at somewhere that, brings them passion, brings them joy, and they
Yeah.
enjoy doing it. But
Yeah.
then even still, to have something else that you can express yourself in outside of that, I think
Yeah.
is just so important because they balance each other out and they feed, one hand sort of feeds the other.
It's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But listen to this one. So when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my parents put me into piano lessons, and the piano teacher lived right across the street. So I'm over there, 5:15 every Friday night, and he's eating his supper, and I'm doing my piano lessons.
Yeah.
And I always remember him saying, "Did you practice these songs this week?" And I go, "Yeah." He'd go, "No, you didn't." Anyways, I think I quit about grades. I had my grade 8 piano, the conservatory stuff, but who wants to play Bach and Beethoven the rest of their life?
No.
So As the years went on and I started playing in bands and getting paid to play and all that stuff, my mom said to me, "You realize, Jeff, when you were taking piano lessons, it was after about just a few weeks, the teacher took us aside and said, 'You're wasting your money with Jeff. He will never play the piano because he just doesn't have it.'" And
Wow.
I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" They said, "You look like you were having too much fun." I went, "Hey, I've been paid all these years and I shouldn't even be playing." But it just shows you, if you have a passion for something,
Yeah.
you can eventually overcome all that stuff.
Yeah, you can get
Especially,
better at it. That's people think that they just have like they have to be a prodigy or else it's not good,
yeah,
you know? Like they think
yeah.
like, oh, if I don't pick up the guitar and play like Jimi Hendrix, then I must not be good at guitar. It's like,
You
no,
know,
you gotta
Johnny,
learn it.
yeah, we do a lot of classic rock, and I've always maintained if you want to hear that song like the original, go get the record.
Yeah, yeah.
Hear it how I play it, how I interpret it, and how I feel it. And because that's the only way I can. And I'm going to sing it, but I sure don't sound like Van Morrison, or I don't sound like somebody from the Eagles. I can
Well,
guarantee that's not going to happen.
it's funny. The who was it? Paul McCartney even said that he's like everyone does covers of Blackbird on YouTube, and he goes, they're all wrong. He goes, none of you
Yeah,
know how to play it, and it's just like, but they all sound the same to me, you know. They all, and that's sort of the point. It's like everyone has their own way of playing the original. If you want the original, go listen to the
yeah.
original.
Yeah, well, I can guarantee you when you're singing that song in the shower, you're not trying to sound like the original.
Yeah, yeah,
Just not going to happen. But
yeah.
no, you're absolutely right. I've been very fortunate that I had that balance. And so, I've been really lucky over the years. Gypsy Moon's been around for about 35 years, but I started out with my first band, and get this, I love the name, Jay Walker and the Pedestrians. And
Oh,
we
nice.
over to Ricky's house on Amy Street.
Yeah.
Ricky had a beautiful set of drums, didn't know how to play them, but he had a beautiful set of drums. And I was desperate to get an organ. So my parents bought me, I thought it was going to be a Vox Continental like I was watching on TV, but it was a chord organ where you screw the legs in. I carried it in an Allen Brown suit bag, and I took it over to Jay Walker and the Pedestrians for their first practice. Of course, there's no way to plug it into an amplifier. So Carl, who's in the band, was an electronic genius at 12, says, "Well, what we do is we got to find some transistor radios, and we'll take the speakers out, tape them to the back because a little speaker in reverse is like a microphone."
Oh,
So, so we had our first job at Westminster School. We were up on the stage. I had my things all taped in there, all plugged into Carl's amplifier.
yeah.
We played our first song. The principal comes over, says, "You're fired." Put a record on. We were done. Now we were lucky. We only knew two songs, but they fired us on the first one. So
Uh,
Gary still laugh about that now that we're still playing. We got fired the first song. And ironically, the principal that fired us hired me as a teacher.
that's hilarious.
I go to small world, eh?
You're like, remember me, sir?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh man.
But no, it's been a lot of fun. But I was just tickled when I knew I was going to get a chance to do this with you tonight, because I'll tell you, teachers don't get a chance to do this very often.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like I've tried to keep my podcast like diverse in the backgrounds of people that I have on here. Like for the
Yeah.
most part, it's been like comedians that I know from my network.
Mhm.
Like because there's tons of comedians in Canada, especially that I think are hilarious, that I think just people just don't know about them yet.
Yeah.
And I would
Yeah.
love to just be part of like helping,
Mhm.
somebody starts gaining a little bit of traction and they search for them, they're going to find my podcast interview with
Yeah.
that person. And they're like, oh, great. I get another hour of this person, like giving people content in that way, and musicians and different actors.
Yeah.
Um, but recently I had on a cousin of mine who has been doing like family history. One of my childhood friends and her husband and their new baby even was on the podcast. Like I interviewed a family.
Mhm.
So I
There
like
you
I
go.
like challenging myself in that way too, of just
Pretty
interviewing all
diverse,
types of
aren't you?
people. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, you gotta love that stuff though,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm sure you never know in the conversation what's going to come up and how it's going to go.
No, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And then
Yeah.
what's interesting is I have conversations with people where it's our first conversation ever.
Yeah.
Like our first, like I'm meeting this person for the first time. here's
Yeah,
the conversation recorded and then upload it. Like I love that. I love
yeah. Oh, I know it's and it's so much fun for me as someone at my age to be able to connect with a young person like yourself and us be able to get back and talk about, do you remember when you were,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
obviously you're not my age, so you're not at that forgetting things stage.
No, no. I'm
But
still in the remember one phase though.
yeah, very seldom do I forget things from school. And I always say to the kids, because they'll come up to you sometimes when you run into them on the street and say, but you don't know
Oh, you
who
froze
I am
right
because
there.
you have changed.
You froze right when
And
you
I
said, I
and
bet
they
you don't
say I
remember who
haven't.
I
I'm
am.
like, oh my God, was I going bald and have a white mustache when I taught you guys? I don't think so. But it's the one thing that never changes, Johnny, is the eyes.
Mm.
Kids' eyes never change. So as soon as I look at the eyes, I go, oh God, yes, I remember. But yeah, we had some fun times back in those days. But you're absolutely right. The balance was important. But for me as a teacher, I don't regret any part of what I was doing. But like I said, I was lucky that I had principals let me do my job. And the reason they let me do it is because the kids were so engaged in what they were doing. You'll love this little story just on the life skill stuff. So I'm teaching over at Commonwealth or at 20 out of where I started this life skills. The kids are working for me. This parent comes in. He says, can I see you for a second? I said, sure. He said, I took my son to the Y last night. And he said, my son looked over my shoulder to see what the membership fee was. And he said, he tapped me on the shoulder and said, come here for a second, Dad. He said, can we afford this? Because he says, I know I couldn't. And I thought, oh my Lord, this is working.
Yeah,
This,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, can we
Oh
afford
my
it?
God. He's based on this McMillan salary. I don't think this is happening. Getting
Exactly.
$2 an hour over here.
We're paying you good money. What are you talking about?
It's just funny to say that.
Yeah,
Your word
yeah,
for
we were
the
paying.
episode, I don't think because I usually say what the word is too, but you picked the word passion. I feel like that's been basically what we've been talking about too. But when I said passion, or when I asked you about that, why did the word passion like pop into your head?
Well, if you've just watched me over the last little while, I get so
Yeah.
excited talking about the things that I'm passionate about and engaging kids, working with kids excited me to the point that I mean, I knew it was my passion. And to me, a passion, when you've got a passion, it's like it's work, but it doesn't feel like work. And you go to the work every day and you know you're gonna have fun. You're gonna have fun with the kids. So you know it's a passion. When I'm writing music or when I'm up on the stage performing, I can just feel the excitement of being there. And what I think that one of the things that I'm proudest about that when Rich and I were working with you guys, and as we got even more popular in terms of the real life learning that we were doing, it was never about us. We always made it about the kids. And we would get people coming in from North Bay, teachers from up there come down to see us, and we would have our kids meet them at the front door. They'd introduce them to everybody in the school, and Rich and I were the last ones they introduced us to because we never made it about us. And so you should be able to tell with just talking. And every once in a while, when Rich and I get together, you can just feel the energy level. It's like we never stopped teaching together. And he's a principal now, so I think he misses the classroom part. But no, the passion is, and that for me, Johnny, you've heard me say a few times about doors opening. I think the other thing that I think is really important for teachers is to help kids, help young people find their passion. And when they find their passion, it doesn't happen through the regular curriculum. It happens by just opening little channels for them, opening little things. And I've never forgotten, I was out for a walk one day and I was up by Thousand Islands and this guy pulled in a truck and he goes, Mr. McMillan. And I said, oh my gosh. I said, how are you doing? He says, you're going to be really disappointed in me. And I said, well, why would that be? He said, well, I dropped out in grade 10. I said, oh, I said, what are you doing? And then he lit up. He says, oh, well, I'm a roofer. But he says, my goal is to have my own roofing company. And I looked at him and I said, why would I be disappointed in you?
Yeah,
You're
you don't need
working,
high school for that.
but doesn't he had a goal? He had
Yeah.
a dream, something he wanted to do. So you say to
Hmm.
yourself, how could I possibly be
Yeah.
disappointed in that? Because that was going to be his passion.
Yeah.
Now, make that passion happen.
Man, that's
Yeah.
like but like the guilt that people feel, for not graduating high school is so sad. To think that like
Absolutely.
it's over. I don't know like who's telling people that too. Like even college, just the push of like where are you gonna go to college? Where are you gonna
Mm.
apply immediately in grade 12 and feeling that pressure of I
Yeah.
gotta take the right course or else I won't get into this college course. And oh my God, can you imagine if I get like a no from the college, how embarrassing that would be? And it's all this fake pressure that's put on you. And it's like when you step back, you're like, wait, do I even actually know what I want to do? Or am I just like panic
Exactly.
picking something?
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right about the pressure. And this whole, well, when you think back, like when I was in high school and I failed grade 9, I didn't even know I was going to fail. I thought I was going to get my 50s, eh?
Oh, that's worse. When
So,
you think you're smooth sailing and then you're like, wait, what? I failed?
so what they did is they took all of us that failed and put us in to another grade 9 class. Well, you can imagine what a class is like when everybody had failed. It was
Yeah.
party time. So then they said, well, you guys aren't smart enough to go to university. So they put us in the 4-year system. Well, all of those things are slotting you saying you're not worthy, because the school system, and not so much today, was set up to get you to university. Well, how many kids
Hmm.
want to go to university? And look what's happening now in the world when we took less emphasis on the trades. We're starving for guys and girls in the trades, just
Yeah.
starving. And yeah, it's too bad, that pressure that was put on.
Doesn't make any
Uh,
sense. I hope it's less now. With the internet, at least people can sort of educate themselves in terms of like realizing that there's more out there, or even helping people funnel to find their interests and their passions. Like, oh, I really like this, this guy works on boats all day. Like, can you imagine getting to work on a boat all day? What do I need to do to get that? Like,
well,
this
you
guy
gotta
works in
think,
cybersecurity and there's a documentary on Netflix about him. How do I work in cybersecurity? And like you just
oh
find
yeah.
it. You can get education now online if you want to.
Well, think about growing up in a small town like Brockville. The opportunities to know about some of those incredibly cool jobs that are out there just isn't there. If you're in a
Yeah.
big city, it's all around you. Like who would ever dream of being a sound engineer at a big studio? Well, we don't have the opportunity to do that, so you wouldn't know about it.
Wouldn't even
Uh,
cross your mind. Yeah, yeah.
It wouldn't. So the opportunity isn't there for you because you don't know about it. But just to go a little further, what you're saying, the pressure may be off because of the access to the internet. But think
Mhm.
of the pressures that are being put on kids now because of it.
Yeah.
And social
Oh,
media, it's putting such pressure to keep up with their friends or keep up with what they think should be expected of them. It's a little scary in that way.
yeah, I'm very happy that like social media wasn't a thing until I was done college.
Yeah,
Like I finished college and then Instagram, I mean Facebook was around, but it wasn't like it is today at all. Like it
yeah.
was completely different. It was just like the odd picture of someone, and it was completely like someone just taking a selfie. It's all blurry. No, there was no like comment section arguments. There was nothing happening. Um, but like God, I couldn't imagine being in like this is something that blows my mind is there's people on TikTok who have achieved viral fame for whatever, and they're in like high school. Could you
Mhm.
imagine going to high school with an online celebrity basically? Like how that changes the
Making millions.
dynamics. Like
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
you can look and you're like she has millions of followers or he has millions of followers. Like
That's right.
that would blow your mind. You're like, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
oh,
It's see, when I always think back of the technology when I came out of teachers college, and we didn't even have photocopiers when I first started teaching. Do you know what we had?
wow.
We had what they called the Gestetner machine, and it was a spirit duplicator. So you'd pour this alcohol into it and you'd spin it out, and the sheets would come out almost a purple color. So what you'd do, Johnny, as a teacher, you'd walk down sniffing it all the way to the classroom. You'd almost be stoned when you got there. Then you'd pass it out to the kids, and every kid would pick it up. And that's what we were doing. So thank God the photocopier came in, because we couldn't handle cassette machines any
Yeah,
longer.
you're just standing there getting stoned in the classroom.
Oh, and you just
Oh my
crank out
God.
30, like that. Oh, it was wild times.
That's
And then the
crazy.
old photocopier came in, and
Yeah.
and then the world of technology took over big time.
Um, Jeff, there's a question that I ask all my guests.
Yes.
It's if you could, let's say, I want you to think of yourself at 15 years old. I'm always finding new ways to phrase this question, but I find thinking of yourself at 15 is good because you know where you were at that time, you know who you were at that time. It's very easy to sort of just put yourself back in that feeling. And the phone rings and it's you now on the other end of the phone. And you can give yourself a piece of advice, like, what do you say? Knowing it won't affect you at
Yeah,
all, but you know, it's easier to give advice, I think, to your younger
I
self.
would say, you know, be yourself and follow your dream. Don't let anyone stop you from following your dream. No matter how hard it is, go for it. If that's your passion, go for it. But the other thing is to be true to yourself. You know, don't try to be like anyone else. Just be you, because you are special and you deserve to be what you and who you want to be.
I love that.
That's
Now,
basically the advice I would give.
I'll for people watching on YouTube, make sure you go check out Jeff McMillan on Spotify. And for people listening, all of the links are in the description below. It's at Get Real Learning on Twitter. Do you still use this one?
Yeah.
Getreallearning.com. All these links, like I said in the description. Follow Gypsy Moon on Facebook and at jmcmillan4801 on YouTube as well, so you can watch more content on there. Is there anything else you want people to check out? Obviously, your books.
I think that's great what you're doing. I appreciate it. My Lord.
I'll
I didn't
send
see this one coming.
I'll send people your way. Well, it's good. It's good to share the viewership around, right? Like if people enjoyed this conversation and they want to go listen to your music or they want to go buy your books, then why not, right?
Appreciate it. And I wasn't even there to give you a raise.
Got it
Think about it.
anyways. Provided a service, I need a raise.
Yeah.
You'll have to tell Rich I said hi. I'll have to get Rich on the podcast too.
I'll do
I don't
that for
know.
sure.
I tried to find him on Facebook, but I can't seem to find him.
No,
So,
he's not. His wife is Jessica.
oh,
Jessica
okay,
Campbell, but
gotcha.
Rich isn't on there.
Gotcha. Oh well, I'll see if I can get in touch with him too, and we'll do another
Love to hear
podcast.
from you. Love to hear from you. Yeah.
All right, Jeff. Thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Fine.
It won't come out for a little bit, but is there any parting advice or anything that you want to leave the viewers with before we sign off?
No, I think that like I say, is be true to yourself and be good to others. And I think, Johnny, if there's any advice, find humor and find laughter, because the world needs it, you need it, we all need it, and laughter will take you a long ways.
And if you want that laughter, just subscribe to this channel. Hit follow.
Absolutely. And
I'll be sending it
I
out.
will promote you for sure.
Nice.
Might not be a raise, but I'll make sure I get the connection going.
Yeah. Share that podcast with your network for sure.
I will do that for sure.
All right, Jeff. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much for this. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. Bye now.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.